What is happening to the rioters or protesters inside of prison? Now, a few people have been asking us for an update on this. I have done a little bit of research into it. There isn't any articles about any of the protesters being attacked inside of prison. But I will tell you about what I do know, what is happening to them, as in through the judicial system or inside the prison system. I do know for a fact that these protesters, some of them have never been to prison before. They go into the local prisons because obviously when you get remanded from the police, from the courts rather, once you get remanded from the courts or sentenced, as in most of these cases, because they have fast-tracked them, some of them have been sentenced within a week of protesting or rioting, and they fast-track them. But when they go to the local prisons, this is where you get categorized, where it's either A, B, C, or D. A being reserved for the most serious offenders, then B, which isn't far behind category A. Category B prisoners are still classed as dangerous. Then you have the category C, which aren't looked upon as being a threat inside of prison or dangerous. They are category C, which is on its way to being low risk. Category D, which is low risk open prisons. But from my own personal opinions of being inside of prison and these type of offenders, protesters, for me, there would be category C, because a lot of them were drunk when they've committed these offences. They haven't put much thought into it. They're not what you would class as a dangerous prisoner or a dangerous person. A lot of them were just fucking idiots that got carried away with themselves, looting shops, putting comments on Facebook, and not realising the severity of what they were actually doing. Obviously, some of them that have been violent on the streets, some of them are a little bit different to the other ones, but all of them are being branded the same. And they have actually been given category B status. So instead of going to a cushy category C prison, they're actually going to category B prisons. Now, I know somebody who's not long getting out of Garth, HMP Garth, who has been commenting on my channel and on the Facebook pages. And I was informed that some of the rioters have been put into HMP Garth, which is a category B prison, and they are in for a rough time. Because in them type of prisons, it's not as bad as in the high security prisons. If these prisoners were put inside of a high security prison, they would be attacked upon arrival. Now, in category B, it's not as bad as in the race wars, shall we call it. Because in the high security prisons, there is a big standoff between certain fractions of prisoners, as in the Muslim prisoners and the other prisoners, I shall refer to them as. Because when I say the other prisoners, I'm not just talking about white lads. I'm talking about whites and blacks who are non-Muslims. And if any of them go in there for that sort of offence and they're not Muslim, then they will be targeted from them type of gangs inside the high security prisons. But in HMP Garth, a lot of these protesters, the faces were plastered all over the news. But I've seen a lot of them myself, and if I seen them again, I wouldn't recognise them. Unless you were watching the TV constantly every day and watching these faces pop up all the time, and you were looking out for them coming into prison on arrival, then you wouldn't really know. Because when these offenders go into prison, and they're in the category B establishment, and they get talking to the people and they say, oh, what you're in for. If their offence was violent disorder during a protest, they'll just say to the other person in prison, oh, I'm in for violent disorder, I got into a fight. And there'll probably be no more questions asked, and they can go what I would call as undercover, where the other inmates didn't actually know that these were protesters protesting against immigrants in the country. But it goes for the other side as well, because there is a lot of people that was protesting against the protesters, and they ended up protesting themselves. And I'm talking like Asians and blacks, Muslims, who have actually been sentenced as well. So it depends on the dynamic of the prison about how they will be treated inside the prison. Because again, these protesters that were protesting against the protesters, bit of a tongue twister, if they landed in a prison up north which was predominantly white, and they put them on the wings and the lads found out who they were, then they would be in for a rough time. Same goes for the white lads and lasses, because it's not just lads. If they were rioting or protesting down London way, Birmingham, where a lot of the prisons are predominantly black and Muslim, if one of the white protesters was put in amongst them on a wing full of Muslims, and the Muslim lads found out that they were protesters and rioters, and they were far right, as they're called, or racist, then they will be in for a rough time, and that fraternity of prisoner will attack on sight. Now that is just what will happen to these inside of prison. But like I've mentioned, if when they're speaking with the other cons and asking what you're in for, and they say I'm in for violent disorder, it will probably be left at that. But there is the ones that have been plastered about the news that people will remember the faces, and they will be in for a rough time. Because like I've also mentioned as well, some of these prisoners, which I'll refer to them as now, protesters, now prisoners, have never been to prison before. They don't know how to handle themselves inside of prison. They'll be in trouble anyways. A lot of them, the armchair warriors that have been putting Facebook posts on, that have been sentenced to 3 and 4 years in prison for inciting violence, these aren't what you would call as criminals or criminally minded, where they're going to know how to handle themselves inside of prison. A lot of them have probably just been, like I've mentioned earlier on in the video, daft idiots that haven't realised what they're doing, sitting with the cans on their armchair, putting Facebook posts on. A week later, they're serving a 3-year sentence in prison, not realising what the hell's gone on. But by this time, they'll not be getting targeted for being a protester. They'll be getting targeted for being a newbie into prison. And if they don't know how to handle themselves, the other cons will be bullying them and taking their possessions off them, getting them to buy vapes and taking the vapes off them, because that's what happens inside of prison, which is a whole different video about bullying inside of prison. I've done them previously, but I will, since I've just mentioned it, do an updated video on bullies or people getting bullied inside of prison. But I just thought I would bring that to your attention, people, because a lot of you have been asking us in the comments about what is happening to the protesters inside of prison. No news articles have come out as of yet, or if there has been attacks inside the prisons, they're keeping it quiet in case of starting something within the prison system, which it probably could do. If it starts inside the prison system, where it's a sort of a race war, then it could escalate, especially with the overcrowding. So if it has been happening, it's been kept under wraps. But I don't think it has, because it would have been leaked, because they would be dying to get this story out to see what sort of prison justice these protesters have been getting. But I'll leave that one there for now, people. Hopefully you are enjoying the content. And as usual, remember to comment, like and subscribe. Take care, everyone.